Oh, freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. I'm feeling good.
Hello everybody and welcome to another movie review. Today, as promised, I will be reviewing the movie that I saw twice in the past 3 days, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. I have my variations of Wonder Woman mug. So the first thing I wanted to say was just more of an observation than anything else, is that out of the last 4 reviews that I've done for movies, 3 of them, including this one, have been focused on canonically queer females. Wonder Woman is canonically bi, but it wasn't represented in the movie, so I'm not going to count that one. Because of this fact, I really want to believe that a trend is forming, and that in addition to more queer stories being told on TV, there are an increased amount of queer stories being told on the big screen as well. And I really hope the numbers continue to grow. So this movie, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, is based on the true story of the Harvard professor and emotional psychologist William Moulton Marston, who created Wonder Woman and the women in his life who inspired her, with whom he also had a polyamorous relationship. So before I get started, I've heard and read a lot of things, a lot of criticisms of this movie, that it's not entirely historically accurate and that this isn't really a good representation of what actually happened. The title card at the beginning of the film clearly says, based on a true story, not this is the true story. I think what they did embellish was necessary to the art and telling of a really cool story, and I'm reviewing the movie, not the history. So this movie, wow. This movie was a standout for me in my past year of movie going, because for the first time in a long time, when I left the theater, I was left surprised. I had this really intense feeling of my emotional intelligence expanding, and I knew that the movie just shifted something in me. Immediately, I felt like I needed to see it again. That was my initial reaction, because there was so much information and so much story and so much things that I hadn't thought of before that were coming in. I felt like I needed a second viewing to really appreciate and really digest everything the movie had to offer. I have so many thoughts about this movie. So the following topics are going to be mixed and varied, and stick with me. I hope you enjoy this review. Let's start talking about it. The first thing I wanted to talk about in this movie was the acting. I imagine it would be really difficult to pull off what this movie was able to pull off. What I mean by that is the fact that they were able to endear you to each one of the 3 main characters as separate people, in addition to as, this group of people who are in love. I loved William Marston's character, played by Luke Evans, and I think every male character should be like him. He was portrayed as having such respect and passion for his work, his morals, and most importantly, his female counterparts. Apart from being awesome for creating Wonder Woman, he was determined to make his life's work known and ended up instilling his morals and his values through her. Olive, the 22-year-old undergrad, played by Bella Heathcote, was so endearing. She's obviously a character that we were meant to love. She was endearing in the fact that she was an outsider coming into this kind of already established relationship, and we grew to love her just as the other 2 characters grew to love her. I feel like it's easy to assume that she was a naive character, and maybe she was at certain points in the movie, but I don't think she actually was. I think she was steadfast and unwavering in her resolve, and I loved that she was entering into this kind of already established relationship with these 2 people who were professors and psychologists, and she may not have considered her equals, but she was determined to be respected. Which brings me to Rebecca Hall's character, William's wife by marriage, Elizabeth Marston. She was so cool. You would likely think that Professor Marston being that his name is in the title, is the protagonist of this movie, but I would argue that it was Elizabeth. The three of them, Olive, William, and Elizabeth, all undergo an arc in this movie, and the three of them together all come up against antagonists and challenges. But I think Elizabeth was distinct in that she was the sole among them who expressed real fear and shame and doubt in their situation. She's arguably the most intelligent character in the film, and I think that, combined with her sort of lack of emotional intelligence in the movie, was what made her the person that I think the audience was supposed to relate to and latch onto the most. It's pretty obvious that a lot of the movie is about her relationship with Olive and how it was kind of this establishing and ongoing thing, whereas her relationship with William was pretty solidly stable from the beginning. They had some of the most intense and also like subtle romantic moments in the movie. I think focusing on the relationship between the two women helped reassure the audience that this wasn't just a movie about a man sleeping with two women, and that the women actually had a love for each other that was separate. The second thing I want to talk about is the thing that kind of took the backseat to the polyamorous relationship in this film, which was the actual creation of Wonder Woman. There were moments of like hitting you over the head with this inspired Wonder Woman, but I think more often than not, these references to the character and to the story were subtle and placed throughout, and they were lifted directly from the morals and passions and experiences of the three main characters. My favorite little piece from the movie, little puzzle piece to the whole picture that was Wonder Woman, or what she would eventually become, was every scene with the lie detector test. And this test later inspired Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. And adding that detail, of course, it was inspired by the truth of the story, right? This guy actually created the lie detector test, but the way that it was used in the movie to create tension and to create moments between these characters, it was so simple. It was almost too simple. I know there are people who like thought it was gaudy and kind of cheesy. The fact that they could just hook a character up to this lie detector test and kind of get them to say things that they might not be ready to say or things that they were afraid of saying. It was just a way for the audience to see what a person said verbally that didn't match how they were feeling inside. And I thought that was really cool. The last thing I wanted to talk about that I sort of touched on a little bit was polyamory. So this is the main thing that I wanted to talk about in this review. This is the main point of the movie, and Wonder Woman is the product of the polyamorous life that these three people were living, which, first of all, who the fuck knew? It was really awesome to learn. I read a book about Wonder Woman when it came out, the Gal Gadot version, that mentioned William Marston and the two women that he lived with, and at first I was like, that's awesome, but I didn't really know the details of the story until I saw this movie. And yes, again, it might not be entirely historically accurate, but it is a really cool movie about polyamory. More than that, believe it or not, this is only the second time that I had ever seen a polyamorous relationship positively portrayed on screen. Because I'm queer, I like to make it my business to learn all that I can about other queer lifestyles, because after all, we're all part of the same community and the same acronym. So before this movie, polyamory was a concept that I was familiar with, but hadn't had a lot of exposure to. The first instance was actually, believe it or not, the AT&T show. Yes, they have shows now, You Me Her, which is an awesome show and I highly recommend it. But that was the first time that I really saw polyamory on screen, but it didn't really resonate with me the way that this movie did. So, when I left the movie theater after seeing this movie, I left with the solidified emotional intelligence and knowledge that polyamory is something that applies to who I am. I've learned over the course of my life that for me, love in a true way is really hard to come by. And if in fact it came to me in the form of two people, I would absolutely gravitate towards a polyamorous situation. This was the first time I ever made that connection, like, in me. And I think that thought is, like, all at once very liberating and very terrifying. We say it all the time, that representation matters. And more often than not in my life, I've found that the reason, among many, why it matters is because it brings things to the forefront of your conscious mind that you might not even know is there. You may not even have any idea that you have the potential for something until you're exposed to a positive depiction of it, which is so cool. It's so cool that art has the ability to give that to people. It's like a fucking gift. It's like, it's amazing is what it is. I was really impressed with the way that this movie represented a polyamorous relationship. The love between the three main characters was never in doubt, even when the outside world was at odds with them. And I think it was impressive because the drama of the film, right? It's a dramatic movie. The drama never came from a lack of respect or a lack of love between the three people. It was always caused by outside forces that were out of their control. And like I said before, it did a really good job of endearing you to each character, and it gave each character such a rich personality that was so different from the other two that it really made you care about each individual character, and then in turn, it made you care about each character's relationship with the other two. I wasn't expecting this, to be honest. I was expecting to see a really cool movie about how Wonder Woman was created because it's the, year of Wonder Woman. I think that it's important to start talking about polyamory and relationships in that vein that are queer and not normal in the way that we've been talking about LGBTQ rights for the past 5 or 10 years. Because like I said, we're all part of the same community and we all are oppressed by the same forces. I read an article today that quoted a Gallup poll that said that 17% of Americans think that polyamory is a moral option. So, that's a fraction of, like, the barest fraction of the population of the United States. There's so much more that we could talk about, and now that I've had this, like, emotional awakening, I feel like I can talk about it. I feel like I want to talk to people about polyamory and talk to people who are polyamorous and who have successfully lived in polyamorous relationships and just see what people say. And I want to learn. I want to learn a lot. And I think that if you feel the same way, you should see this movie because you are going to really like it. On a lighter note, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I hope it wasn't something that you were expecting. I hope it shocked you a little bit. I hope that it gave you something to think about. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys very soon. The next thing I have coming up is Supergirl on Monday, so I will see you guys then.
Freedom is mine, and I know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life. I'm feeling good.
Hello everybody and welcome to another movie review. Today, as promised, I will be reviewing the movie that I saw twice in the past 3 days, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. I have my variations of Wonder Woman mug. So the first thing I wanted to say was just more of an observation than anything else, is that out of the last 4 reviews that I've done for movies, 3 of them, including this one, have been focused on canonically queer females. Wonder Woman is canonically bi, but it wasn't represented in the movie, so I'm not going to count that one. Because of this fact, I really, really want to believe that a trend is forming, and that in addition to more queer stories being told on TV, there are an increased amount of queer stories being told on the big screen as well. And I really hope the numbers continue to grow. So this movie, Professor Marston and the Wonder Women, is based on the true story of the Harvard professor and emotional psychologist William Moulton Marston,